Strength training is so popular these days. We should strengthen our core. Many experts address this. Today, we will talk about how strength training our mental and emotional health strengthens our very core, the essence of who we are. It is such a big part of our overall wellness. Thankfully, there is increased awareness of mental health in our world today. Our emotional and mental resilience is vital to our overall health. It's all connected. Since we don't have a gym to strengthen our emotional resilience, what can we do? Let's take a look. Turns out, our thoughts are worth far more than a penny. Did you know that your thoughts actually create your emotions, which lead to your actions? That's right. In fact, Scripture tells us that as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Therefore, taking our thoughts captive is where we want to start. Thinking on whatever is true and honorable and worthy of praise. But let's chat for real. We all have times that this can be challenging at best, right? If it's stress, relationship issues, work or financial struggles, or any number of other tough situations, not minimalizing any of those, but the beauty of how God made our brain is that we can choose our thoughts about our stress and our situations. So if we choose an elevated thought, our brain will seek to prove that it is true. And as you might guess, it does the opposite too. When we choose a more negative thought, our brain seeks to prove it to be true. So either way, our thoughts are our choice, and they are what create our emotions. That must be why His Word teaches us to take our thoughts captive and to think on things above. What we are talking about is meta-thinking. Our thoughts about our thoughts, the story that we tell ourselves about us and about others. We can choose our perspective on our story, and this helps us to elevate our thoughts. Mental and emotional health has been important from the very beginning of time. However, it has often been swept under the rug and not as openly talked about as it is in our time. I'm thankful for this current awareness and that so many now reach out for help when they need it. Let's continue to normalize getting help for mental and emotional health. Since so much of our mental and emotional health starts with our thoughts, because remember, our thoughts create our feelings, which lead to our actions, we clearly need to be conscious of them. We need to take them captive. In addition to the stresses that are mentioned earlier, another source of our thoughts is what we consume through social media, the news, etc. Many of us are so careful what we put into our mouth because of the detriment to our body, but studies show that what we allow into our mind can have detrimental effects on our mental and emotional health. Thoughts can be as toxic as the worst foods and other toxic products if we don't keep them in check and take them captive and see where we may be off. The enemy has a heyday with toxic thinking. I would highly recommend that you read Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. It illustrates this so clearly. I love C.S. Lewis, by the way, huge fan, but that's one of the books that I'd recommend on this topic. Oftentimes a thought can actually be true, but it can still need to be taken captive. We want to ask if this thought is serving us, be it true or not. How is it not serving us? Are we actually using a true thought in a toxic way by dwelling on it over and over? Because over time, this can even make it worse. Since we live in a fallen world, we all have experienced less than perfect situations, right? Or even trauma, unfortunately. Those situations or events may be true, may have actually happened, but we may be causing ongoing harm by retelling our story and beating ourselves up with our own thoughts about our story. We want to stop the story that is not serving us, and we can choose to retell that story with some elevated thoughts. Even slightly elevated thoughts can serve us better and help to improve our emotional resilience. I have helped many of my clients do exactly this. I am not talking about ignoring our pain. Look for my podcast on processing emotions. But for now, what I want to address is using our story for our good instead of our harm. This is how we can be kind to ourselves, which helps us to be kind to others. I'm sure you've heard, maybe experienced, hurt people, and we don't want to pass that pain on. We want to stop that process. So remember, our thoughts are our choice. A great way to see your thoughts is to actually journal them. You get those thoughts out of your head and onto paper. This action helps us to see them, not just physically, but acknowledge them on a deeper level. It also gives us a place to store them rather than allowing them to take up precious mental capacity, right? Next, we evaluate, how are these thoughts we've written down serving us? Are we held captive to some stinking thinking? Do we need to elevate any of our thoughts? Are they holding us captive instead of us taking them captive? We get to choose, remember. We can tell our brain what we want it to think on. When we choose an elevated thought, one that lines up with truth and what God says about us, we can create new neural pathways. The science behind this amazes me. Our brain can actually be trained to look for things that prove this new thought, and it helps us to think in healthier ways that will much better serve us. We will see this result. This new thought actually will show up in our actions and therefore in our lives. Remember, we get to tell our brain what to think. It's meta thinking. It kind of makes me think of Pooh Bear. Oh, the thoughts we can think. Our mental and emotional resilience affects how we show up in our relationships and the world. Mental and emotional resilience is a lot like taking in the oxygen on the airplane before we can give it to others. We have to be emotionally and mentally resilient to be able to help those around us become stronger too. Our physical wellness is also affected by our mental and emotional wellness. In fact, our body is so good at storing emotions that we might find them showing up in the darndest of places. Good news, when we improve our mental and emotional resilience, we also become stronger in our overall wellness. I like to think of it as a table. We need all of the legs functioning on our table and strong so that our whole body or table benefits. And those around us benefit as well because we're better able to love and serve them when we come from a place of mental and emotional resilience and physical strength. It all affects how we show up. This is true kindness, to think the best of ourselves and others, to line our thoughts up with what God says of us and others. When we borrow His view, His lens, it helps us be a better conduit of His grace and love and mercy. It will flow through us to others. This kind of kindness changes everything because it's His grace operating in our lives, and we all know that His grace changes everything. I think you just might be as amazed as I have been. Start this journey, and until next time, this is my hope for you. You can find me at stephaniejohns.com or on Instagram at The Hope Coach. You can also use the links below to join my email list or the form for one-on-one coaching.